Welcome to the Intercourse Show. I'm your host, Mr. B. Today we have a very exciting show for you. Here's the latest. Apparently, there's not a lot of people who's a big fan of this Iran versus Israel and U.S. war. And there seems to be a lot of infighting in the GOP as a result of it. Yesterday, apparently there was, a congressional hearing in the Senate, and a Navy veteran, stood up and voiced his views about the war, and it got sticky. Let's go ahead and check that out.
For America, no one wants to fight for Israel.
Oh my God. Why are you here? Why are you getting arrested?
Free Palestine, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Palestine will be free.
Chaos erupted inside a U.S. Senate hearing room after a dramatic confrontation between a senator and an anti-war protester left a man injured and stunned lawmakers and officers alike. What began as a protest against U.S. support for Israel quickly spiraled into a physical struggle that echoed across Capitol Hill. Tensions boiled over during a Senate Armed Services Subcommittee meeting when a military protester interrupted proceedings with a loud anti-war message that immediately halted the hearing and triggered a rapid response from security. The protester was identified as Brian McGinnis, a Marine Corps veteran and Green Party candidate for the U.S. Senate in North Carolina, who loudly declared that no one wants to fight for Israel, while officers attempted to remove him. Video footage circulating online shows 3 Capitol Police officers struggling to subdue McGinnis as he resisted being escorted out of the hearing room, forcing the situation into a tense and chaotic struggle. Montana Republican Senator Tim Sheehy then suddenly rushed forward and joined the effort to restrain the protester, grabbing hold of McGinnis's leg as officers attempted to carry him through the doorway.
Blue Chew Gold is a staple in my house. Why? Because they really work.
But the confrontation escalated further when McGinnis hooked his arm around the doorframe, attempting to stop officers from forcing him out of the chamber as security struggled to pull him free. In the footage, Sheehy can be seen wrapping an arm around McGinnis's shoulder and attempting to pry him away from the doorframe moments before a loud snapping sound can be heard on camera. The clip appears to show McGinnis suffering a serious arm injury during the struggle, with witnesses later suggesting that either his wrist or lower arm had been broken during the confrontation. Sheehy later reposted the video on social media, defending his actions and claiming he had stepped in to help de-escalate what he described as a volatile situation. The senator said Capitol Police were attempting to remove an unhinged protester who was actively resisting officers, and that he intervened in an effort to assist law enforcement in restoring order. According to Sheehy, the protester had arrived at the Capitol looking for a confrontation and ultimately got one during the heated encounter inside the hearing room. In another video recorded shortly after the incident, McGinnis is seen being escorted away while wearing what appeared to be a Marine Corps uniform and voicing support for the Free Palestine movement. The individual filming that clip claimed McGinnis's arm had been broken during the struggle, though officials have not publicly confirmed the exact nature of the injury.
We just witnessed a Marine veteran interrupting the hearing, and they broke his arm.
Why did he intervene?
Because there is a war in Iran, and our military brothers and sisters are going to die for Israel, and we are here to say no. We do not support Israel. We do not want to die for Israel. Stop the war in Iran right now. now.
And what did they do to him?
They pulled him out, got his arm trapped in a door, broke his arm, tackled him to the ground. It was a very, very intense situation.
Capitol Police later released a statement confirming that the protester had been treated for an injury, but did not disclose specific medical details about what had happened during the clash. The department also revealed that 3 Capitol Police officers involved in the confrontation required medical treatment following the violent altercation inside the hearing chamber. According to the official statement, the incident began when an unruly man launched an illegal protest during the hearing and then violently resisted officers attempting to remove him from the room. Police said the protester's actions placed everyone inside the hearing room in a dangerous position as he fought back against multiple officers attempting to escort him out of the room. Authorities have now charged McGinnis with 3 counts of assaulting a police officer, along with 3 additional counts related to resisting arrest and obstructing the hearing. Capitol Police also emphasized that protests are not permitted inside congressional buildings, pointing out that designated areas outside on Capitol grounds are available for demonstrations. Prior to the incident, Brian McGinnis posted a fiery video on X, vowing to confront the Senate head-on. He urged anyone disillusioned with the Trump administration to join his call for accountability.
Hey guys, I'm here in DC trying to speak out against the Senate and ask them why they're going to send our men and women to harm's way when our elected officials said that it would be no war. Anybody who feels disillusioned and betrayed by our government, you're not alone. Join us in demanding accountability for this betrayal. Free Palestine, free America. Let's go.
News. So as you can see, things got heated there in the Capitol building. That's one aspect of it. And then I just recently ran across a clip where I believe Megyn Kelly is now being critical of the Trump administration. And this is what she had to say.
And being a conservative or being a Trump supporter or being part of MAGA does not mean you have to accept another Middle East war without questions. And anybody who tells you that can suck it.
As we continue to track the fallout of Donald Trump's unilateral, incoherent, and wildly reckless war of regime change in Iran, some criticism in particular seems to have triggered Trump, specifically from Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, causing him to lash out at them after Megyn Kelly, in particular, voiced her disagreement with Trump on Iran. And it's really interesting because it cuts to the heart of what MAGA is: a viable political movement with actual principles, or an authoritarian cult of personality that will simply follow Trump wherever he goes. And so I want to show you what it is that Megyn Kelly said that pissed Trump off as much as it did, and then we'll get into Trump's response. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, folks, Megyn Kelly recently interviewed former MAGA Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. I played that for you, but I want to focus here on what Kelly herself had to say. She's one of the biggest right-wing podcasters. She is a former Fox News host. She's very effective at what she does. She is a vicious, mean-spirited person, okay, who has regularly trampled on her own principles. But what sets her apart from most people in her space is that she is willing to criticize Donald Trump, at least from time to time, and has even done it in his face in the past few years. So with that in mind, I want you to hear what she has to say about Trump's regime change war in Iran.
And it would explain perfectly why President Trump seems to be having so much difficulty clearly defining why we are doing this. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have found the explanations lacking. I woke up on Saturday morning like the rest of you to his videotaped announcement where he was wearing the hat, did not walk away with a clear understanding of what we're doing. It was restatements of things we've known for years. Yeah, we hate Iran. They hate us too. We've known that. Why are we doing this now? What is the catalyst? Obviously, President Trump does not want to say we did it because of Israel. What he said instead was, quote, our objective is to defend the American people. Okay, so far that sounds good. Why do we need defending? By eliminating imminent threats, he said, from the Iranian regime. Okay, we're under imminent threat now. What is it? What's the imminent threat from the Iranian regime? We saw CNN's Scott Jennings, who's always talking with the administration, parroting this over the weekend, posting on X, quote, senior Trump admin officials telling me that credible intel indicated Iran planned preemptive missile strikes against U.S. military targets in the region and against civilian targets as well. Failure to act would have resulted in mass U.S. casualties. Does that make any sense to you? I mean, stop and think about it for a minute. I'm close to this administration in many ways as well, but I don't allow them to use me like a fool. Does it make
shots fired at Scott Jennings, who is a fool, by the way, and a total dishonest hack and loser? Even Megyn Kelly's disgusted with him.
Any sense to you that Iran was planning preemptive strikes against us and our civilians, knowing full well of the massive military assets we had moved into the region, the aircraft carriers and so on? Obviously, it doesn't. And sure enough, now today, it's all over. I mean, the Washington Post, U.S. intel assessments that Iran's forces were unlikely to pose an imminent threat to the U.S. mainland within the next decade. Okay. Again, the attack came despite U.S. intel assessments that Iran's forces were unlikely to pose an immediate threat to the U.S. mainland within the next decade. And beyond that, CNN and Reuters report that Trump administration officials on Sunday acknowledged in closed-door briefings with congressional staff to whom they're obligated to brief, to speak and give their intel, quote, there was no intelligence suggesting Iran planned to attack U.S. forces first or to strike our bases in the Middle East. Okay, so there was no indication of an imminent attack. I don't know why Trump said that other than to try to justify the actions.
Exactly. He lied his ass off, and he's wildly incoherent about it. Megyn Kelly is pointing this out, that this is just a completely wildly incoherent position.
Let me ask you something. What if own nothing and be happy is not a future prediction, but a present reality?
Trump is having a hard time selling it to the American people, and already 6 American soldiers have been killed. Donald Trump has their blood on his hands. It's Trump's fault, and there should be a political consequence for this. Here's another clip.
Which leaves us asking again, why are we doing this and why now? President Trump mentioned he felt like we were getting tapped along by the negotiators dealing with our nuclear representatives, Kushner and Witkoff, which I believe, yeah, I'm sure they did. That's all they ever do. But Trump himself told us that we obliterated that program. That was his word, obliterated. Last June, we obliterated their nuclear program. Like not 4 years ago, 7 months ago. He mentioned that they still had, quote, ambitions to make a nuke, which I believe. So is this about bombing them out of their ambition? Is that why 4 service members are dead? And they're
Remember, she recorded this before the 2 additional bodies have been found. So it was 4 confirmed U.S. fatalities at the time. Now, at the time of recording, it's 6.
Families are grieving them today because Iran had ambitions? That can't be it. I don't understand fully what's going on here. I do believe Trump doesn't want to get us into another forever war. And I believe he wouldn't willingly submit to quagmire. You know, in his mind, he thinks he can do this. He's been all over the board on the timing of it too, but generally he's saying 4 weeks or so. And he thinks we can do enough damage to them over the course of 4 weeks that we can achieve what? Again, I don't know. Is that going to bomb them out of their ambition? We don't know who's taking over. The Ayatollah's dead. Again, it's a great thing.
I'll play another clip in just a second. But again, I like the fact that she's pointing out that Trump's incoherence even goes with respect to the nuclear program. Remember, this is one of the biggest quibbles of this. You know, Donald Trump and members of the Trump administration have cited Iran's nuclear ambitions, nuclear program, and the imminent threat it posed. And then they're telling members of Congress the exact opposite, right? So again, they're lying to the American people in real time. And it puts Trump in the awkward position of saying, trying to justify, well, you insisted that you obliterated the program. Obliterated means wipe it out. You didn't just damage it. You didn't even just severely damage it. You totally destroyed it. There's nothing left. And then in 6 months, it's not only back, but it's back strong enough that it justifies an even greater attack against Iran than the initial attack on the nuclear program, the American people aren't going to buy that because they're going to recognize, well, you're either lying then or you're lying now.
Trump did say that. Put him on the hot seat for that. He did say that he obliterated it, and now all of a sudden they're close, weeks away. So that's a bad look for him because they're using his own words against him. That is a bad look for him. Now, I want to see Trump succeed in everything that he's doing as a president, but there are certain things that I think is outside of his element. I don't think Trump is at his best when he's fighting wars. I think that's going to leave the negative stain on him, and it's going to give his enemies a chance to attack him for legitimate cause at this point, because once you start shedding blood, innocent blood at that, for things that could have been prevented, I think it holds a different weight. And unfortunately, he's opened up that Pandora's box. So the criticism is coming. It's not just coming from his opposition. Now it's coming from people who are avid supporters of him, now criticizing the decision to engage in this. They feel as if he's not making the decision on his own and that others are influencing or pushing his hand to do it. So he does open himself up for criticism.
Or you're lying both times. You lied when you said you obliterated it, and you're lying now. Either way, you're just not telling the truth to the American people. Megyn Kelly is trying to warn Trump, like, hey, you put yourself in a really awkward position here with your lies. Precisely. At a time when the midterms are rapidly approaching and Trump's war on Iran is not only resulting in the deaths of hundreds of civilians and 6 American soldiers and potentially more, the Trump administration says that more are probably on the way, but are now also causing gas prices at home to skyrocket. Not good. One last clip from Megyn Kelly, and then we'll get into Trump's response.
This is well beyond that. We're going to be there for a month. We've taken out 40 plus members of the regime. What are we going to do about all the other members of the regime? Because right now Trump is saying we think they're going to put down their arms, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard members, which is the most vicious group they have over there, and join with the Iranian patriots in the streets, he said. They are? Based on what? Because they were literally shooting the Iranian protesters in the face a couple of weeks ago. I've got serious doubts about what we're doing. I support the president. I voted for the president. I campaigned for the president, as you know. But that doesn't mean, and being a conservative or being a Trump supporter or being part of MAGA does not mean you have to accept another Middle East war without questions. And anybody who tells you that can suck it.
I have to say I agree with her. I don't want to go into war. I don't think it's the wise choice. I think the cost is far outweighs the benefits. And I think a lot of people don't want that. I mean, if you ask the public, that's not what they want. You know, people got real problems at home that they need resolutions for. And getting into an endless war is not on anybody's wish list, personally. Now, there's a select few people who's pushing it, but they have ulterior motives for why they want that. You know, the majority of people don't want to see us at war with Iran or anybody else, because this thing could go left quick. So Megyn Kelly actually voicing her opposition to it is big, because these people have big followings and a big influence, a big voice. And so her, Tucker Carlson, I think Nick Fuentes, a few other people have voiced their opposition to it. And, you know, this is not what you want going into your midterm election. You're not getting your base together. You're kind of fracturing your base, and you need everyone kind of putting in the call to rally behind your group, because if they don't and you lose the midterms, then you lose the next 3 to 2 years of your presidency, because the opposition the whole time is going to be focused on trying to get you impeached, trying to get, your agenda halted, trying to distract and delay the things you want to get accomplished. So you got to figure out a way to do it. Even if Trump didn't want to do this, I think the timing was off. Maybe he should have waited until after the midterm elections or something, secure a victory, and then at that point pursue something. But he didn't, which I think really doesn't serve him well. But we'll see.
That's key. That's key. Okay. We'll return to that.
There's nothing unpatriotic or unsupportive of one's conservatism or general adherence to MAGA type principles to say, I would like to be better convinced that this is worth the sacrifice of American blood and treasure. That's where I am. That's where a lot of people are.
True.
That is where a lot of people are. So she says you can suck it if the expectation is you just simply have to do whatever the hell Donald Trump says, right? And that Trump isn't obligated to persuade people. That's what Megyn Kelly says. So let's think about who that might apply to. Trump fires back at Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson over their criticism of Iran strikes. Trump responded to criticism within the MAGA movement over his decision to begin a massive bombing campaign against Iran. Among the critics within the MAGA tent are Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson. On Monday, journalist Rachel Bade of the Inner Circle spoke with Trump, who fired back at the two former Fox News hosts. Quote, I think that MAGA is Trump. MAGA is not the other two. MAGA wants to see our country thrive and be safe. And MAGA loves what I'm doing, every aspect of it. This is a detour that we have to take in order to keep our country safe and other countries safe, frankly. Trump added that Kelly, quote, should study her history book a little bit. Megyn was opposed to me for years when I ran the first time and nothing stopped me. And so, some people are against, and they always come back. She came all the way back. But now I guess she doesn't maybe like the idea of this war. But I do, because I have to keep nuclear weapons out of the hands of the Iranians.
Listen, it's called Connect Team, and it's insane. I don't do schedules or timesheets manually anymore, and it works.
Okay? In other words, Donald Trump is saying, and he says it explicitly, I am MAGA. MAGA is Trump. MAGA is whatever I say it is. And if I say we're going to war with Iran, that's it. I don't need to persuade you. I have simply declared it to be so. I don't owe you an explanation. I don't owe you persuasion. You must get behind me. So in a roundabout way, Megyn Kelly, in so many words, is telling Trump himself to suck it because Trump himself meets her criteria for sucking. Suck it if you think that you don't have to persuade me and that you're not MAGA if I'm unpersuaded. You can't be MAGA if you're unpersuaded. Donald Trump says, yeah, you're not MAGA if you just don't cultishly devote yourself into what he's saying. Glenn Greenwald, another right-wing libertarian who stupidly, foolishly gave Trump the benefit of the doubt, but has become increasingly critical of Trump and very relentlessly critical of him since the war in Iran. He said this, if, as Trump said again last night, MAGA means nothing more than fealty to whatever Trump believes when he wakes up, even if it's the exact opposite of what he said he believed the day before, then it is, by definition, a cult and not a political movement. That's why former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has said there's a fundamental difference between MAGA, a cult of personality and leader worship, and America First, a fixed set of ideological values. And of course, there are some people in the responses had some choice words to say to Glenn Greenwald. But this is why I say MAGA is predominantly an authoritarian cult of personality, the likes of which we've simply not seen in modern American politics. And there is something incredibly dangerous and pathetic about it that deserves contempt and disdain. This is not a principled move. I mean, listen, when President Obama ran for office, he eventually won over the Democratic base. He's wildly popular, the Democratic base. He had the biggest inaugural turnout we've ever seen of any president, way bigger crowds than Donald Trump. But there wasn't a cult of personality around President Obama. He had his diehard fans, but nothing like this, right? It wasn't a cult. And that's why the president was repeatedly criticized by the Democratic Party, within the Democratic Party, in ways that Donald Trump is simply not. And President Obama tolerated criticism and disagreement within the party in ways that Donald Trump does not within the Republican Party. So MAGA is a cult. Megyn Kelly and Glenn Greenwald and Dave Smith and Marjorie Taylor Greene are finding that out in real time, and I'm sure they're making wildly different decisions about what to do about that. But yeah, Donald Trump doesn't feel that he owes any of them an explanation other than his declaration that a thing must be, and that's the end of the conversation. So it's kind of interesting, again, in a roundabout way, Megyn Kelly just told Donald Trump himself to suck it.
I would disagree with him. I don't necessarily feel that MAGA is a cult. I do, however, feel that MAGA is a group of principles that I think the majority of the country can rally behind, you know, and Trump was a spokesperson for those principles. If he's talking about a call to normalcy where people aren't forced to take vaccines, where people aren't forced to accept drag queens reading books to their children as if that's appropriate, where people aren't forced to accept the fact that somebody in the kid's school could, you know, arrange for that child to have a sex change without the parents being notified. You know, I thought the whole MAGA movement stood behind those type of principles of like normalcy, like things that are not far reaching, like, hey, Christians can, you know, express their opposition to things, and Christians can practice their beliefs without being scrutinized. And, you know, we're not going to spend frivolously on programs that does not serve our interests. We're not going to be taxed excessively. You know, we are going to take measures to protect our borders for the sake of giving back to the people who are contributing to the system. You know, a call to normalcy. I think those principles is what rallied a lot of the country, irrespective of what color you were, black, white, Spanish, Indian, Asian, whatever you were. You can wrap your mind around something rational. And I think initially all the things that Trump stood for within MAGA seemed rational. Now, all those things, like him saying, well, you know, we shouldn't be paying the bulk of NATO's defense. We shouldn't blindly defend countries abroad without them taking any interest in at least paying their fair share in it. That's reasonable consideration. Or him making a statement about, you know, making sure that we're not investing in things that is not serving the public good. Those are principles that I think a lot of people rallied behind. Some were more passionate about certain principles than others, and others were not. Now, where I think Trump is deviating from some of those principles is he, unfortunately, did the thing that he said he was not going to do. When Trump originally ran for office, I think his position was, I am not going to take money from any foreign groups. Because when you're funding your own campaign, you don't have to answer to anybody. You don't have to owe anybody any favors. So Trump's first run for office, he was funding everything out of pocket. He was doing it himself. And that was essentially him going against the system. And people loved that about him, and they rallied behind him because of that. The moment I think things completely changed for Donald Trump is when he decided that he was going to change up a little bit, and actually take money. See, because he understands, he's been playing a political game for a long time. Trump understands once you take money, you have to answer to the people giving you the money. Nobody gives you money without conditions. Everyone's got some conditions when they loan you money. Right? If the guy's paying for the date, he wants to get laid. There's conditions. There's really conditions. He may not say it openly, but that's the expectation. If, you know, like if someone's loaning you money, or giving you money, there's normally conditions surrounding why they're giving you the money. Now, there are very few instances where someone may be donating towards a cause because they feel as if it's a noble cause. But even people who tithe, they want to know how the pastor's using their tithe money, even though they're supposed to be releasing the money and just trusting that they did their part and that it's in God's hands, and whoever it is that's now the steward of that money can do what they need to do with the money, and they shouldn't be concerned. But in reality, people want to know, how are you using the money I gave you? This is why I thought the money was going to be used for. So a lot of times when people give you money, they got things that they expect. And I think where things shifted for Trump, after he's essentially, him and his family fought the whole United States government for the term of 4 years. He probably just got worn down, man. The guy got worn down of fighting by himself and for himself, and maybe he thought it'd be easier for him to make some allies, for him to, you know, assimilate a little bit with the system, you know, capitulate, I think is the word, a bit, and to actually take some funding, take some support, so that it's not just him against the world. Now he can get some people backing him, and he can get some supporters. And I think he did that. I mean, that happening, and then, you know, an attack against his life. Now there's new elements about whether or not he could live and his family's safety. He's a human being. I think that would weigh on anybody. So I think at some point he decided, I don't want to do this all on my own. Let me actually get some help, and let me capitulate to some of the people in the swamp, essentially. He was there to clean the swamp, but he figured, damn, this swamp is too swampy. I might as well get some people who's maybe not as dirty in the swamp to work with. And I think he made some partnerships with some people on the Israeli side, possibly, that had an agenda and saw Trump as a good spokesperson because he had the support of the American people. He won the popular vote. He came back and he did the impossible. And so there's no better spokesperson to champion a movement, to champion an agenda than the guy who's come back from out of nowhere. So I think in so doing, there's pieces and there's people around Trump who maybe are playing both sides. He's got advisors that may have a connection or an affinity to support certain Israeli causes, and those advisors' voices are winning him over. And it doesn't help that, you know, there is a group that essentially bought out a lot of senators and other, you know, members of Congress. And so that group has played the game masterfully to a point where Trump may not be in a position where he can oppose those voices. And then Trump, the way they framed it, is that they've convinced him to believe that this is what's best. And now Trump's doubling down on it. He now believes that this is what's best. This is the direction to go. And I think his ego won't let him get off of that, won't let him hear the other side. And I think for the people speaking for Trump on the other side, they're just trying to say, hey, Donald, your legacy will be stained by this decision because it will not be the way you've been led to believe it will be. I'm sure the same thing happened to George Bush. Somebody who was advising him told him, we'll be in and out. We're going to do this a couple weeks tops, maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months, and we'll be out of there. And we'll place somebody in power, and we'll move a couple of things around. You'll be glorified, you'll be praised for the decision. And he naively believed what they were telling him. 20 years later, it's a stain on his record, and Trump himself even criticized the man for doing it. But I think when you're outside looking in, you don't know the powers that be that's influencing a decision. But now Trump's on the inside. He's no longer on the outside commenting. He's the guy that's now being advised to do certain things. And I don't know that he can resist. So as a result, Trump is capitulating to that side, but he's alienating the core supporters that helped to bring him into power again. And those are the people who are speaking up for him, the Tucker Carlsons, the Megyn Kellys. And now all the people who were criticizing him seemingly are his supporters. Those are the people that were the never Trumpers. And now the people who were supporting him are supposedly his enemies. You see how that tide changed? That's what the thing is with politics, man. Things are so tricky. It's hard for you to put your finger on what's going on, and who's who, and who's for who, because the positions change by the day, you know? So my heart actually goes out to Donald Trump. I think he's trying to do his best and make the best decisions he can make. I don't expect the man to be perfect, because none of us are. I think he's doing what he thinks is in the best interest of the country. I don't know that I agree with that decision. And a lot of people who care about him don't want him to do it because of the repercussions. Trump sees it as a way to ferment his legacy as the greatest president of all times, maybe to secure another or an official, you know, what was the award that he was supposed to get? Nobel Peace Prize. So he's in a way trying to cater to his legacy by making certain decisions, by going all out and doing certain things. And he's not realizing the exposure that he's leaving himself open to. Now, for what it's worth, Trump is 80 years old. He's an older man. And he's pretty good for his age, but he's also an older man. And eventually, I just don't think the fight is as strong in your elder years as it is in your younger years. So there's a part of Trump that's probably on the decline in terms of his pushback. You know, he's older. The body wears down. You know, the mind wears down. Fatigue kicks in. So he may not be weighing it the way people would like for him to weigh it, or seeing it the way people would like to see him. The one thing I would say is show the man some grace. Pray for him. Pray that God opens his eyes to seeing things for what they actually are. Pray that God gives him the boldness and the clarity and the inner conviction to actually retract from the direction that he's going in. And just trust that, you know, the Bible says God holds the hearts of the king, and trust that could ultimately change the course that he's on. But I think the people who's speaking out against this are speaking out against it because they want to see Trump succeed. He's their guy. And they don't want his legacy to be tarnished with a war that stains his hands with innocent American blood, simply because he was being used to advance an agenda of another person or another country. And, you know, at whatever cost. And for Trump, now that his ego's involved, he may not see it like that. He may want to double down. He's now in an active fight, and it's on the world stage. Now there's the part of it where you're like, I can't lose this. So now he's doubling down, even if he may be hesitant about moving forward. It's almost like when you go to a bid and they could be bidding for a dollar, but the fact that somebody across the room is willing to pay 10 times the value of the dollar, now you're willing to pay 100 times the value of the dollar. So now a person's paying 10,000 times the value of the dollar. And before you know it, somebody bought a dollar for $100,000. Why? Because they were in an environment where there was competition and egos got involved and things happened. So I think Trump is at that place. Again, I would encourage people to just pray that God removes the scales, removes the people around him that is advising him negatively. You know, the Bible says that we are to pray for our leaders. So Trump's got my prayers, man. I want to see this guy win. I actually think he is a force for good. I don't think that he's being led in the right direction with this particular decision, because it goes against what he, I think, initially stood for. No wars, no innocent blood dying in vain, and just focused on doing things at home to advance the American people's interest in their livelihood. I think those things are good things. Obviously, him negotiating on trade, those are Trump's strengths. You know, he's a pretty smart guy on that. I don't want Trump fighting wars. I think if a war came, Trump could hold himself down, but I don't want him initiating wars and now he's doubling down and there's casualties and we're losing stuff. And I don't think that's his calling. But I'm just a guy with an opinion. With all that said, I do want to transition over to another clip. I think there was a resolution brought in Congress where a few senators wanted to curtail Trump's authorities to continue taking offensive strikes at Iran. And the Senate took a vote. And unfortunately, that vote did not pass. Let's go ahead and show footage from that vote that took place yesterday, less than a day ago.
Of course, conversation is better than taking notes ever could. This is Pocket, an AI note taker that
I don't know what will happen, but I know it will be their decision. It's not our decision. America's not going to go in and run Iran.
This guy, Lindsey Graham, shouldn't be talking, honestly. He's not a credible source as a representative of the neocons. He's not a credible source to talk about in an expertly manner doing operations in other countries. The track record is not good. Obviously, I think he's one of the people who's been paid to speak on behalf of this movement, and he's going to advocate for that. But he doesn't ever speak intelligently about what's actually happening. When they ask him a simple question like, what happens after we take out their leader? If you don't have a clear answer for that, then you're going to lose a lot of people. And he doesn't. He's saying it's up to the Iranian people to now take up arms and to now lead their country towards a democratic country. They don't want that. There's like 100 million people in that country. These people, the majority of them weren't complaining about their lifestyle. There's a few people who don't like it. There's a few people who dissented from that power structure, but I haven't seen any evidence that the majority of the people want to overwhelm their government and take over. But this guy continues to push that talking point. And I don't know. He's just, to me, not an expert. And nothing against the guy. I actually like Lindsey Graham. I actually thought I was indifferent towards the guy. I just feel like this isn't his field of expertise. So when he talks about it, giving his track record on Iraq and a few other places where they try to do nation building and regime change, the track record is not good. So when he talks, for the people who's been paying attention over the years, they don't want him to be the spokesperson of anything, because it's like, oh, you're the guy that told us Iraq was going to be just this easy, or you're the guy that told us Benghazi was going to be this easy, and Libya and all these different places you told us was going to be a cinch and never turned out the way you told us it was going to turn out. We're not going to believe you. So when he ran for president, nobody supported it because his credibility wasn't there.
We're going to try to take down a terrorist regime that is bent on our destruction. They've been building missiles 100 a month. The goal is to hit us. They've been supporting Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis since 1979 to kill Americans. The IEDs used in Iraq and Afghanistan coming out of Iran aimed to kill thousands of American servicemen. And they were made by the Iranians, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and Quds Force. This regime is a cult of death.
6 Americans have already died for an illegal war that no one in this country wants. 900 to 1,000 people in the region have died. U.S. embassies all over the region are under attack. Thousands of Shia Muslims in Pakistan right now are protesting, a Shia insurgency targeting the United States in the works. Iranian missile and drone attacks have hit targets as far away as Cyprus. Oil prices up by 9%. Gasoline prices, their largest one-day increase in 20 years. Natural gas prices up 45%. The region is in chaos. American consumers are paying the price, And for what? We still don't even know the reason for this war.
It's a fact.
On this, the yeas are 47, the nays are 53. The motion to discharge is not approved.
With that, Trump gets to continue his offensive strikes, and hopefully it results in a peaceful resolution that does not plunge us into further war. Well, that is my update on this war and what's been happening. Obviously, there's some dissension happening internally inside the GOP. Truth be told, both sides of Congress wants this war to actually happen. One sees an opportunity to regain power, i.e. the Democrats, but they both kind of support actions against the Iranian government because in a way they're both supported by AIPAC to do that. So how this plays out, we all still have to check in and see. The one thing I would encourage everyone to continue to do is to pray. Pray for our leaders. Pray that the truth gets revealed. Pray that God guides all of our elected leaders in every decision that they make, and that God could ultimately handle things and turn things around, even when it looks like it's going in the wrong direction. It's the only thing that gives me peace as I see what's happening. Just remain prayerful. Use this as an opportunity to get closer to God and to petition God about what you'd like to see happening. He holds the hearts of the king in his hand, so I encourage people to do that. With all that said, if you guys are not connected to the In the Court Show, definitely like and subscribe, connect, weigh in, comment, tell me what you think. Are we missing it? Or do you support the war? Do you not support the war? Is this for greater good? Is this worth the cost? Is this worth the added expenses? Is this worth the American lives that may be lost? Weigh in. Let me know what you think. And because your voice matters as well. All right. Thank you all for joining me. And until the next time we speak, be well. God bless.